Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Collective Dismal here. Just wanted to hop on and make a video tonight dedicated to a longtime listener and supporter of this channel, whom most of you will not know, but some of you may. He goes by the name Hollow Gonzalo, and the reason I'm choosing to dedicate a video to him specifically is because, number one, I've had a number of interactions with this person as of late, which have led me to level some very harsh criticisms against him, which almost came off as bullying in a sense, which is never my aim. I don't want to bully or berate people on here. But I think sometimes, if in order to have any chance at helping a person, you have to really brutally kind of force them to assess their predicament in a much more realistic way, in a much more compromised way than what they're accustomed to. And the other potential benefit I see in addressing this video to him is because I think a lot of people who listen to my channel, who frequent the same group chats that I frequent, etc., they are very much like him in many fundamental psychological ways. So I want to get into this a little bit. And this isn't to put anybody on blast or to expose anybody. It's not supposed to be mean-spirited in nature, although it's inevitably going to come across that way at times. But I basically, he had DM'd me on Discord, an app which I thoroughly disdain for reasons which will become obvious as I go through this. But I always make myself pretty accessible to anybody who cares to reach out and talk to me. I've always said, here are my socials. You can reach me privately. I will respond, and we can have a discourse. We can have a discussion. And even though I don't use these apps very often, like Twitter and Discord, I understand that other people exclusively use these apps. And so I want to be available, to as many people as possible, because I profit a lot from these discussions too. So it's not like I'm just doing some kind of selfless charity work here by talking to these freaks that reach out to me. I also glean a lot of very useful insights which shape my worldview and allow me to better understand my predicament, my surroundings, environment, the social changes, make better predictions about, the coming state of man, things like this, right? And so he asks me if I would like to voice chat with him. And it was quite late at night, as it is right now. I have to talk a little bit quietly, but I told him, in advance, because I've heard this person on streams a couple of times. And I know he is a bit of like a degenerate. I know he talks about potentially meeting up with transgenders that he meets on Grindr and stuff like that. And I'm not really into it. I'm not really I find it interesting from an intellectual perspective that people are kind of going this route, but I'm not into I'm not Thomas White. I'm not going to sit here and entertain a 4-hour conversation about the shape of the tranny's penis or whatever, right? So, for me, I have a short fuse for this. And so I told him in advance, I'll talk to you. We can pick up the phone. We can have a phone call. It's fine, right? But don't reveal anything weird to me. Don't tell me anything illegal. Don't tell me anything don't try to show me your dick. Nothing like that, because I'm very, I'm very, very leery of people like this. I always like to give people a chance to express themselves to me. And I meet people, if somebody's divulging a lot to me, they're being very open, then I, in turn, will be very open with them about, my thoughts, my views, etc. And so the guy was drunk. You could tell he was very drunk, which To be fair, he did tell me he was before we went into a call, but you know, as a listener of this channel, I've said before, I despise drunkards. I think they're the lowest scum on this earth. I think they're down there with PDF files. I think they're down there with the worst people that nature's ever produced are drunkards. My brother is one. I hate my brother. I would be gleeful to find out that he had died slow in a ditch. I do not like him. I do not want to like him. And I don't like drunk people in general because of that. And so, we enter this voice chat, and he did divulge some things that I was not really comfortable with hearing. I didn't, necessarily have any way to respond to these. It was off-putting. And he's kind of treated me like a confession booth or whatever, which I'm not going to repeat here. It's his business, whatever. But the thing that makes me more resentful with these types of people than anything else about them is the fact that they don't have a thing. And I'm going to get into what I mean by not having a thing as this video goes on, progress through this video. So there are a lot of people, a lot of incelibate men, a lot of dejected excess male types who it only takes a few minutes of conversing with them to find that they don't have a thing. They're completely devoid of any particular interest in any given topic, in any discipline. They don't have a craft, a hobby. They don't have specialized knowledge of any sort. They're basically just failed normies that are constantly thinking about nothing else besides some workaround for how they could get a foid or how they could kind of sneak into the club after they've been thrown out of it. That's it. Just how do I get back in the club? How do I get back in the club? How do I get back? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I cannot relate with these people at all, even though they express to me that they find me relatable, that what I say on this channel resonates with them because of all of my social discontentment and stuff like this. They find me relatable, but it's a one-way thing because I don't find them relatable. Since the time I was 10 years old, I was just autistically fixated on guitar. I thought I was going to be Dimebag Darrell. I'm like, yeah, why not? Why him and not me? I could do it. I just have to move my fingers a little faster. I just have to do this, do that. And I would go to the guitar store every day. I'd make my dad I'd drag my dad there. I'd read all these magazines, yada, yada, yada. This was even right around the time when people started having internet access at home and stuff like this. And the second I got internet access, all I would use the internet to me was just a tool for more guitar tabs, more guitar videos. The internet was like nothing else besides that. To me, I was fucking driven to this thing. And even as I got into my teen years and I became a little bit of a stoner kid, I was a perfectionist with this. I was the guy that would understand all the different strains of bud, the high times, this sativa, this is the fucking all of this stuff, right? I had to know how to roll perfect blunts. If somebody didn't know how to roll a joint properly, I would kind of resent them. I'm like, how's the only thing is you smoke weed and you suck at it? If you're going to do something, do it right. I'm a perfectionist. That's why I don't even put out a lot of content. I guess compared to other content creators I do, but I have enough substance, enough things that I need to discuss that I could theoretically be producing videos probably every other day, if not daily. I've done that in the past for a while, but I don't want to just come on here and fill some void. I don't want people ask me, just produce more videos. I just need the background noise while I'm doing this or that. And I sort of refuse to oblige because I want every single thing I make to be purposeful. Something that people can take away from and say, wow, that introduced a new concept to me. Wow, that introduced a new way of framing old concepts. Or I've never thought about things exactly that way. Or I have thought about them, but I've never thought to word them that way. Or something additive. I don't want to be just another tard on the internet trying to generate views and clicks. So these people basically have an exclusively external locus of validation, meaning that all validation has to be parsed through some kind of social approval where they can get a foid, or they can get a friend, or they can get invited somewhere, or they can make money and get a better job, or they can be around important people. Whatever it is, it's all kind of out there. They're waiting on something outside of themselves to validate their worth. And if they don't get that, which the bad news is you're not going to. You're not going to get that if you're hollow Gonzalo, right? So they have no way to generate like an internal locus of validation where they can just sort of be like an autodidact. They can nerd out on something or other, do it for its own intrinsic worth, for its own intrinsic merits, and just kind of relish in the fact that you did that, right? You study the Bible. You don't have a certification that says you're qualified. You didn't go through the institution. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't even matter what the thing is. I will respect anyone automatically, even if I don't like their cope, even if I don't like their craft or their hobby, whatever we want to call it, right? If you could land a 360 flip on a skateboard, I'll respect you. But what I don't respect is these like guys that don't have a thing and they sit around and basically construct these elaborate daydreams about how this guy's telling me he's going to learn a different language and he's going to move to a different country and he's going to, get a wife there. And first of all, the question it always raises for me is like, to do what? You're like an empty fucking husk. What, you're going to live in Paraguay and you're going to speak this foreign language and you're going to ingratiate yourself with these cultural customs that are foreign and alien, and you're going to get some like 4 out of 10, and then what? You're going to sit there and like sit in the same Discord chat that you're in all day, every day? Like, I don't get it. And the first step that I take when I'm kind of assessing somebody's potentials, the impediments that they have to realizing their potentials, the hurdles, everything like this, is assessing that whether or not they're like a loser hand of solitaire, basically. Like I said in the last video, some solitaire hands are just losers. They're non-starters. You can play around, you can move the cards here and there, you can put the kings and the queens on top of the whatever the fuck, right? But that game was a fatalistic hand, period. And some people are just that. And it's unfortunate because there's nothing you could actually tell these people. They were just born of very recent medical, technological innovations, industrial boom, this artificial abundance that we've created, food sanitation, the war on germs, the war on Darwin, the war on eugenics, all of this. They were born of it. And their boomer parents had them for no particular reason. They just thought, well, the economy will provide, they'll just fall into this little niche and they'll have some way by which to add value to society. But they didn't account for, depopulation, economic degrowth, all of these things. They didn't expect that there'd be more tickets sold than there are seats on the bus, and a lot of people will be left standing on the platform as it drives off. Because in history, there wasn't a thing. It really wasn't a thing, right? Like, if you believe that there's however many billion people on the planet, and when my boomer parents were born, it was only 50% of what it stands at today, etc. And when their parents born, like, the exponential rate of population growths does create a bit of an anomalous situation where we've overcome scarcity rather, but in doing so, we've failed to genetically vet like newborn babies, and we start coming up against all of these limits to growth, like the Club of Rome. Where a person's worth is less than the effort that would go into treating the water that they poop in. Like, that's basically what it's come down to at this turn of history, at this juncture in history. So some people, again, they just have to take that up with their parents. I think that, like another fellow YouTuber, Javelin V, once said, he thinks he might have a lawsuit against his parents for giving birth to him, which I think should be explored more. I think there should be class action lawsuits against the boomers by their children who are these kind of no-win solitaire hands where, you could almost prove analytically that they had enough foreknowledge about the economy, about IQ and its heritability and things like this, and what kind of levels of intelligence are required to work what type of jobs and earn which types of incomes, etc., that they could have known in advance they were necessarily setting their kids up for a really bad life. They were setting them up to be rotters, essentially, perma-rotters. Now, whether the blame falls on the parents or the government for not preventing the parents, that's something that I've gone into in the past, and it's sort of besides the point of this video. But you have to, first of all, know how to determine whether that is your predicament or not. Now, let's say with Hollow Gonzalo that this isn't his predicament. I'm willing to concede that he is, he maybe has potential to be a productive member of a number of possible societies, which we could, like, theoretically construct. There's just not this one. Obviously, it's not the one that we currently live under, which is like PC woke, JEW, hegemony, etc. There's no demand for people like him. There's no demand for people like me. And it's the only game in town. I don't believe in parallelism. I don't believe in return to the land. I don't believe in all this. There's one game in town. The government has like a monopoly on the status quo. You can't have countervailing status quos. You can't have plural status quos. Like, you can't have a plurality of status quos. You kind of have to just like or lump the one that exists at the time when you're born. So let's say he's not the fatalistic solitaire hand. Let's say he's just become deeply inhibited by these environmental epidysgenic factors, and they've created a kind of negative reinforcement loop whereby society doesn't want you, you're dejected, you're out of the the good graces of polite society, whatever. And so as a result, you become weird. You have all this time on your hands, you have no purpose, nobody assigns you a purpose or a role, and so, you know, you weren't really equipped to just nerd out about you weren't prepared to nerd out about bodybuilding or literature or computer science, whatever. Take your pick. Like I said, it could be anything. Skateboarding, it could be demography, what have you. But the point is that these people's first inclination is to kind of blame society, whilst simultaneously all they do is come up with schemes about how they can get back into the fray. It's like the pinky in the brain, you know, every day they come up with like some different elaborate scheme to pull this off, and then they always fail and they get demoralized and they're back to the drawing board, and then they get sort of reinvigorated by the next idea, and it's just this ceaseless cycle of ups and downs. And but all it ever manifests as is rotting in your room. And when this happens, honestly, I will take the position of a kind of defender of Jordan Peterson in this case, where, you know, people made fun of him, they memed about him. Clean your room, bucko. That whole thing, right? You got to clean your room, bucko. People in this community are so stupid, intellectually disingenuous. They're so quick to straw man rather than to try to show charity to somebody's view or their prescriptions. And they certainly did this with the whole clean your room thing. They tried to equate it to like telling somebody to have confidence and, you know, a firm handshake and make good eye contact, when they were very separate ideas. The whole clean your room thing, it comes from the fact that these people are internally very fucked up. And they develop this Caesar or nothing attitude about getting out of their situation and their predicament. It's like, either I'm going to move to Guam and start a cult and have a harem of like Connie, or else I'm just going to sit here and be resentful and shitpost online all day. They don't understand the kind of like incremental nature of trying to unfuck themselves. Because like I said to him, for most of these guys, they lack discipline to such an extent that you couldn't even get them to commit to a 30-day push-up program where they do anything, 10 push-ups a day for 30 days. That's it. Nothing else being asked of you. Most of the listeners would fail that. They would do it for a couple of days and then they would stop. They would miss a day and then it would get easier to miss days, and then they just wouldn't be doing it at all and they'd have moved on. And then in frustration, they cop out and they use the excuse, well, how is this going to get me a woman? How is this going to get me a better job? How is this going to lead to that? How is this? Because again, these half-wit people can't think, they can't even conceive of the idea of something just having inherent value just for its own sake. Like, if they can't tie it into somehow it leading to my poop, my sex, my women, my something or other, right? My buying a house, then they can't justify it and they won't partake in it at all. You know, this guy said he's a Christian. And I make no bones about it. I'm not a fan of Christianity, but I'm a fan of people taking things seriously And this, he said he hadn't read the Bible. He hadn't gotten around to it. I mean, I've read the Bible twice cover to cover, and I'm not even an adherent of this worldview at all. It's just like something that I feel like I looked in the mirror one day and I said, this fucking Bible thing is kind of important in the history of humanity. And I don't want to be a guy that's like never read it. I don't want to go to the grave without knowing what it says in the fucking Bible. I just don't want to view myself as like a guy who's never read it. And so you just kind of sit down and fucking work through it. But these guys can't do anything. They couldn't even read for 10 minutes. They couldn't do 10 push-ups. They couldn't even take a shit without their phone. And yet, all of their plans are setting the bar so far out of reach. Learning another language, bro, you can't even watch a fucking movie probably without your phone, missing half of what's going on in the film. You would probably feel like you had bugs under your skin if you didn't check your phone for 10 minutes. You know what I mean? To see the same old fucking nothing. Nothing going on. And so they set themselves up to fail right from the outset. Like, Jordan Peterson's right about this. Absolutely. Like, for example, I mean, I'm not impervious to this. I started putting creamers and sugar in my coffee. I'm having one right now. And it was, a relapse for me. I had gone 2 years with only black coffee. I was quite proud of that. And I had some cream in the fridge. I made some eggnog and I had some leftover whipping cream and I didn't want to waste it. So I was like, I'll put some in my coffees until this is gone or whatever. But once I did it once, now I'm just back on the wagon again, right? So it's constant. Like I said, I made these videos about how I had gone back to smoking tobacco after 10 years and I wasn't going to, but my hard line was that I was going to be a pipe smoker. I wasn't going to smoke ciggies. Had a bad day at work. My coworker was there. She's a smoker. I asked her to leave me one. I smoked it. Went home, got a pack, and now I'm a smoker. I'm smoking, at first it was a couple a day. Now I'm just smoking a lot. Just had one before I recorded this. I'll probably go out and have another one. And it's easy to justify because it's been minus 30 fucking degrees here. And it takes like 25 minutes to smoke a bowl and a pipe. So I'm like, and it's hard. You got to light it with matches. It's more of a process. Stuff like this, it's like too cold. And so I said, I'm just going to step out for a ciggy. And maybe when it gets warmer, then I'm just going to ditch the cigs and go back to the pipe. And, it's easy to tell yourself these things. You give yourself these outs. But that's where it starts. I preach a lot of ascetic practices on this channel. That's always been a very central theme of my content, has been the ascetic ideal. And yet I don't really practice it. I will fast. I do fast a lot, but I always relapse on my fasts. I always rebound. I always end up compensating. I go and eat like an extra large pizza and I don't make progress. I'm a failed ascetic, but I want to be good at it. At least that's something, right? Most of these people don't even want to do something. I worked for the last 5 days and I wasn't getting much sleep. And even when I'm sleeping, I'm dreaming that I'm at the wage cage dealing with these dumb nogs and stuff like this, dealing with these fucking hassle people coming up and stressing me out. So even when I'm sleeping, I'm waging, right? In my dreams, I'm always waging, always wage caging. And I wake up and I don't feel like I slept. And I go in and I come home. All I want, all I wanted was some time alone to think. And I knew, for the next 6 days, you're not going to have it. When I finally would get an hour here or an hour there, I wanted to read a little bit. And I like to read aloud. I like to record audiobooks. It's one of my hobbies, one of my passions, one of my things that keeps me kind of like grounded, right? It's one of my ways that I get internal validation. And then, my wife had taken the baby to the mall to give me time to read. We're going to get out of here and you'll have all the time. You'll have a couple hours before you go into work to read. And lo and behold, my fucking dad had to come down and do laundry. But not one load, not two loads. He had to do fucking the whole month's worth of laundry for fucking 4 or 5 loads. The whole day, both the fucking washer and dryer are going. The furnace keeps kicking on every fucking 20 minutes. And it's just done, right? There's no chance that I'm going to get any time to think. But if I say anything, then it seems like I'm just whinging. I'm just bitching, I say, can you wait, 2 hours to maybe run another load? And he's, oh, all right, well, oh, fuck. All right, do your thing then. Just like it's like this major inconvenience for everybody that I want a little bit of time. People are walking on the floor above me, fucking banging this and banging that. And the only time I can hang out, think, I want to make more content. There was a film review that I want to do for this channel. And one of my goals was to get that done before I go away. But it would take me a couple hours. I have to kind of construct like a framing. I have to, connect a lot of themes and stuff. It was not like an easy film. This is like a very extremely difficult thing to analyze. A lot of effort and work would have to go into it. And I'm a perfectionist. I wouldn't make it if it wasn't top tier. I'm not just going to shit out a half-assed response to something. But it's like these guys like Gonzalo, Critters, all these other like cretins in this quote-unquote community. It's like they don't even have an inner monologue so far as I can surmise. Like I fundamentally can't relate to people who don't just want to sit. I want to be away from society's influence, from the noise and the fucking hassles and burdens of people. I don't want sex. I want to fucking sit and think. I want to pontificate. I want to contemplate, things very deeply. And I seldom ever get a chance to do that. Right now, I'm so lucky that I'm able to, because I went to sleep at around 6 p.m. and I woke up at midnight. Everybody's asleep in the house, and it's like I can come on, I can make this video, I can get a lot of stuff done. I'm really enjoying it. I'm really relishing in the solitude, but these other people are just... Same with like Javelin V, this guy, and I like him, don't get me wrong, but he's like, there's an element of resentment there because he's a beaner, and it's like Black Pill Backshots was saying about these beaners. It's like they constantly need friends around, girls around, food around. They need to be like externally stimulated at all times. They can't just find it within themselves to conjure up a reward system that doesn't necessarily like tie into this kind of broader like social thing. And I've gone through this with people before where they'll kind of feign like they want to be about something. And so I help them to the extent that I can. I'm not like a tutor. I'm not a life coach. If anything, I'm like a negative example of what not to be. However, if somebody wanted help with guitar, for example, or they wanted weightlifting advice, or they wanted to understand philosophy a little bit better, I'm in a position to help people with those things. But they kind of goad me into investing in it with them, and then only to turn around and realize I just got kind of involved in a LARP that they were doing. They weren't really like, it's the same thing with this kid Blobby, right, that I fell out with. He LARPed for months about wanting to read philosophy. He had me create this whole reading list for him, and I put a lot of effort into it. I didn't just throw a couple book titles at him. I really considered him as a person. Like, what is his attention span? What is his level of comprehension? What are his areas of interest? Um, what, like everything. I factored all of it in, and I spent a lot of time. And then I turned around, I said, "Hey, how are you making way on that reading list?" And he's, I don't think philosophy's for me, actually. I realized it's kind of boring. I think I'm going to get into economics. And they just do this. They just kind of move around, move around. Something's hard. They're met with resistance. They're like, oh, that's not for me, actually. And then they go move to something else, and they move to something else. I've been watching these skateboarding videos that the Jews have been recommending to me in my YouTube shorts. And I don't know, I'm not a skateboarder, but I find it aesthetically pleasing to watch, and you realize when you actually start watching this stuff that 99% of what skateboarders do is they just keep doing the same exact ramp dozens, if not hundreds of times, and just falling down again and again and again and again. And they'll land it once. Like, almost every skateboard trick you see that looks fucking awesome, the guy went like 60 in 1 fail success ratio. It was like 60 in 1 before he got it. That's what skateboarding is. That's what philosophy is. You read like 200 paragraphs that you're too stupid to comprehend. They're over your head. And then you read one that finds the mark and you're like enlightened by it. Whoa, that's a hot take. And then you go back and you keep slogging and you keep slogging and you keep slogging. Music is like that. They think that there's just this like creative burst of genius. Like Bach just would like sit down and like genius would burst out of him. No, that's not how anything is done. But these people aren't capable of enjoying the pursuit of something just for its own intrinsic sake, because they just want to be able to do the fucking 900 flip so that people, because they're still looking for that external locus of validation, they want people to say, wow, that guy's awesome. That guy's a badass. That guy's a fucking cool guy. I want to be friends with him. I want to suck his little dick. You know what I mean? It's still outwardly directed. They just view skills and hobbies and crafts as means to an ends, to like impressing people. And so they won't stay the course when things are tough. Like, same like fishing, right? Everybody wants to catch a fucking 10-foot bass. But they don't realize that fishermen just fucking sit there all day. That's all they do. They just sit there. Just stare at a fucking lake. That's it. Then like a couple times in their life, they pull a huge fucking bass and get a picture with it. And then they go back to staring at the lake and coming out empty. The one advantage these guys have is that they can get so much return on investment from such little effort by setting very small micro goals and then achieving them. But because of the Caesar or nothing mentality that they have, they'll scoff at that. You tell them to do, just do fucking 10 push-ups once a day for 2 months. Why, bro? Why? Just like Ronnie Coleman said, everybody want to be a bodybuilder. Nobody want to lift this heavy-ass weight. Fucking truer words never spoken, man. And I get frustrated when these people reach out to me and I lend them my ear and I, set aside the fucking time, which I don't have a lot of. I set it aside and I talk to these guys and they just want to be big bodybuilders that don't fucking want to lift heavy weight. Tell me how I can be an expert without ever cracking a book. Oh, maybe if I just watch a YouTube video, or maybe if I just chat GPT's a couple things, I'll be able to reach all of my goals without any effort and without any kind of frustration or struggle. Or I just really despise people like this. And the video wasn't to, my aim wasn't to bully this guy or make him feel bad. It's like Sigma Trialectic said, I understand your plight, but just know you're a blight. That's how I feel about these guys. Like, there's a level of sympathy that I have for them because I am a determinist in a certain sense. I understand, like, your genes kind of determine who you are and it's heritable and that. I agree with the antinatalists. You didn't really, consent to being born. You were sort of dragged out of the blissful realm of non-entity and forced to, exist in this state of goonerdom. But we don't need these guys driving railroad spikes all day like it's the fucking 1800s. There's no demand for that kind of a thing. So you're on your own. You're not even wanted as a slave in this society. You would beg to be a slave because slaves have a purpose. They're part of a project. They're part of a greater picture. They're still tied into the mainframe. These guys are not even slave. They're the undesirables. They are the untouchables. They're lower than Shudras. And we live in a non-judgmental society for the most part. That's not exactly true, but it's true insofar as, yeah, you could go on Grindr and you could suck 10 tranny dicks a day if you can find them. Sure. It's not illegal. No one's going to really, society's not going to really drag you out to the public square and throw tomatoes at you. You can sit around and goon all day. You never have to crack a book. You never have to fucking do anything. Nobody's going to come in and force you to be disciplined. So we really do live in a society, I think, in the future that's going to select for agency, self-determination, asceticism, and impulse control. There's always going to be porn around. There's always going to be food around. There's always going to be free time for people like this. Too much free time. Are they going to indulge it or not? Most people will. Most people are abundance tards. Access to women is gone. Access to good jobs is gone. Pretty soon your immediate family, if you're white, is going to dissolve into non-existence. And what are you going to be left with? You're going to be left like dust and clay with nothing. I mean, literally nothing. But how are you going to manage that is really the question. Like, what part of you are being depopulated and there are more men than women? Don't you grasp? What part of that is confusing? Like, what part of the term excess male don't these people get? Like, their brains are so infected with these platitudes about human rights and human worth, humanism, and no child left behind, whatever, that they can't even conceive of the fucking cruelty that is their exclusion from society. They thought there was some like deep moral imperative that was like baked right into the state, that it can't leave people behind because it's mean. The state is being mean. It deemed you a fucking carbon emitter. That's all you are. You're a fucking carbon emitter. You have to sit and come to terms with that. You weren't chosen to be part of the society and where it's heading. And you could sit around and be envious of guys that take Stacy's to college football games, but you're not that fucking guy. The only silver lining to this is that because society has rejected your input, fundamentally rejected your existence, and all of the opinions that go with that, their opinion of you now means dirt. You are free to opt out of recognizing them as well. And you can make an inward turn. And I do believe that this maybe even has some kind of revolutionary potential. Because the legitimacy of the state, of society, it's not a physical thing. It's an idea. It's abstracta. It is reliant on some kind of like mutual recognitive affirmation in order to persist. Like, you have to kind of affirm it through recognition, even if that's in a dissident manner, right? Even if your only acknowledgement is negative, like a critique of it or something, you've still lent credence to it. And that's what these people are doing. They're kind of feeding the beast system with their mental energy, with their infatuation with women, with fucking jobs and careers and property ownership and all of this, right? They don't have ownership over themselves, though. They're weak mentally and physically. They're fucking sickly, just epidysgenic. When society no longer recognizes you as a person who's suffering with loneliness and depression and lack of purpose, lack of meaning, you no longer have any onus on you to recognize society. And to continue to do so, you're just a fool. You have to go and double down on the online relationships that you have with other people in your situation. But it can't be simply that you sit around and stew with other people who sit around and stew about their predicament. You have to get past that. In the same way that women, as a cohort, move past men pretty much across the board. I don't even believe in these things like oofy doofy. I don't even believe in like ugly bastard theory. I believe, these hold in certain situations, but in general, I think females are post-sex. They're also post-monetary. You can't buy your way into this. If you don't have the inexplicable factor that they're looking for, which is largely, due to circumstances by birth and also your genes, then you just have to move on in any way you can, in a private manner. And I know a lot of people aren't studious enough for that. A lot of people aren't really autodidactic. A lot of people aren't really self-starters. They're not good at learning. But again, then you're faced with the question. I mean, like Nietzsche said, right? One should die proudly when it is not possible to live proudly anymore. If your situation is such that all potential avenues for validation, both internal and external, are closed to you, and you're sitting here, trading penis pictures with a transgender, something like that, you may want to say, there's only one thing that I can still control, and that's how I go. But if you wait on that too long, even that will be taken away and decided for you. So, I don't have much advice to offer. Yeah, I don't think highly of the people that listen to me, and this is why. This is like, you're getting a little bit more of a deep insight into like the kinds of encounters I have with my most like loyal followers of this channel. These are the types of people that are inevitably drawn to my content, my rhetoric. In a certain way, they're the very source of the dismal that I take such issue with. They're not victims, they're perpetrators. And they're not perpetrators because they had the intent to do harm, but because their genotype is such that they can't do good. They can't actually produce an additive contribution. They can only detract from the good by merely existing because they weren't vetted. We don't have any eugenic policies or procedures in place to vet these people. So, dismal days indeed.